Chosen one. I know what you've been feeling even if you haven't said it out loud. I know there's a part of you that keeps whispering, I know I'm not wrong, but why do I always have to explain myself? You can sense that you've changed, that something inside you has shifted, yet the environment around you still treats you like the old version. And now you're tired of talking, tired of clarifying. But at the same time, silence makes you uneasy, like if you stop explaining something might fall apart. And as you're listening right now, you may be thinking, wait, this is me. How does this sound exactly like my life? Chosen one. You are not here by accident. This moment was not random. Heaven aligned your steps to this message with perfect timing. Scripture says that there is a season for everything under heaven, and you are standing at the edge of a new one, a season of elevation. A season where God begins to transfer authority, clarity, and provision to those who are ready to stop living on permission and start walking in identity. If you stay until the end of this video, you will understand why God is telling you to stop explaining yourself and what actually happens when your upgrade becomes obvious. Before we go further, subscribe now to stay connected to what heaven is releasing. Comment 777 and write the city or nation you're watching from as a sign that you are ready to receive and see this word through. Chosen one. Something has shifted in the spirit around you, and you've been feeling it long before you had language for it. You didn't suddenly become distant. You didn't become cold. You didn't lose empathy. What changed is that your spirit outgrew the need to constantly explain itself. And that inner tension you've been carrying lately, that strange discomfort when you feel pressured to justify your decisions, your boundaries, your silence, that is not confusion, that is discernment awakening. There was a season when you explained yourself because you were still learning who you were. You explained because you were trying to keep peace. You explained because you were taught that being understood was the same as being accepted. And for a long time that made sense. I remember living there myself, feeling like if I could just say it the right way, soften the tone enough, give people the full context, then maybe they wouldn't misunderstand me, maybe they wouldn't leave, maybe they wouldn't turn against me. But chosen one, there comes a moment when God quietly withdraws that grace, not to punish you, but to promote you. Because explanation is often a language of survival, not authority. And God does not elevate people who are still negotiating their identity. Heaven does not operate on permission, it operates on alignment. Scripture says there is a time when the vision speaks for itself, and you are stepping into that time now. That's why your words feel heavier. That's why your silence feels louder. That's why explaining yourself feels exhausting in a way it never did before. Your spirit is rejecting a posture that no longer matches your assignment. Chosen one. I need you to hear this clearly. The pressure you feel to explain is not coming from God. God is not asking you to clarify your calling to people who lack the capacity to steward it. When God upgrades someone, He does not announce it with noise. He announces it with weight. And weight doesn't argue. Weight doesn't convince. Weight simply enters a room and rearranges it. That is what is happening to you right now. You may have noticed that certain conversations feel pointless now. You say less, not because you have nothing to say, but because you've learned that not everyone is entitled to your inner world. You may have noticed that when you do speak, people either lean in or pull away. That's not coincidence. That's separation. God is filtering your environment because what is coming next in your life cannot be carried by the same dynamics that supported your old level. There was a time when you needed affirmation to keep going. There was a time when you needed feedback to feel steady. But chosen one, that season is closing. God is building internal authority in you. The kind of authority that doesn't rise from applause, but from obedience in silence. I know how uncomfortable that feels at first. I remember the anxiety of not explaining, the urge to jump in and fix the misunderstanding, the fear that silence would make me look guilty or wrong. But every time I stayed quiet, something unexpected happened. The truth surfaced without my help. People revealed themselves without my defense, and peace replaced the chaos I used to carry. This is what God is teaching you now. Silence is no longer absence. It is presence. It is the presence of someone who knows who they are. When you stop explaining yourself, you are not being arrogant. You are aligning with heaven's order. Even Jesus did not answer every accusation, not because he lacked words, but because he understood timing and authority. There is a wisdom that comes when you realize that some questions are not invitations to connect. They are attempts to control. Chosen one. Some people keep asking you why because they are uncomfortable with who you are becoming. Your growth disrupts the agreements they had with the old version of you, and instead of adjusting themselves, they try to pull you back into explanation, back into justification, back into familiarity. But God is saying no. Do not go backward to make others comfortable. You are being repositioned for rooms that do not require explanations, only results. And this is where the supernatural shift begins to touch your material world as well. Because authority precedes provision. Heaven does not release wealth, influence, or elevation into insecure vessels. When God knows you will not bend over, explain, or shrink to be accepted, He can trust you with more. I have watched opportunities open not because I spoke more, but because I stopped performing. Doors opened when I stopped chasing understanding and chose alignment instead. Favor came when I stopped trying to be liked and committed to being led. Chosen one. What you are experiencing is not isolation, it is insulation. God is quieting your life so He can recalibrate your posture. The old patterns of emotional overgiving, over-explaining, over-functioning, they cannot survive where you are going. And yes, some people will misunderstand you. Let them. Some people will project onto you. Let them. You are not responsible for managing narratives that God never authorized you to carry. There is a divine wealth shift tied to this very instruction. When you stop explaining yourself, you conserve spiritual energy. When you conserve spiritual energy, clarity increases. When clarity increases, decisions sharpen. And when decisions sharpen, alignment accelerates. This is how heaven backs your next move. Not through noise, but through precision. Not through defense, but through discernment. Chosen one, you are not losing your voice. You are refining it. You are not becoming distant. You are becoming deliberate. And you are not falling behind. You are being set apart. This is the posture of someone about to receive something weighty. Something that cannot be rushed. Something that does not need to be defended. Your upgrade is already visible, even if not everyone has the eyes to see it yet. So rest in this truth. You do not need to explain what God is doing in you. You only need to stay aligned with it. Let heaven speak through your fruit, your peace, your stability, and your authority. And as you remain still in this posture, you will begin to notice something quietly unfolding around you. The world will start responding differently, not because you demanded respect, but because you finally stopped asking for permission. Chosen one. There is a deeper layer to this instruction that most people never confront because it requires honesty about where the habit of explaining yourself was formed. Long before it became exhausting, it was necessary. Long before it felt like weakness, it was protection. You learned early that being misunderstood came with consequences. Silence invited assumptions. Assumptions invited judgment. And judgment threatened your sense of belonging. So you adapted. You learned to explain not because you were wrong, but because you were trying to survive emotionally. I know that place well. There was a time when every decision I made felt like it needed a footnote. Every boundary needed a reason. Every pause needed justification. Not because I owed people answers, but because somewhere along the way I was taught that my inner world only had value if others approved of it. And chosen one, that programming runs deep. It doesn't shout, it whispers. It tells you that peace comes from being understood, that safety comes from being agreeable, that love comes from clarity. But heaven is now dismantling that lie in you. What you are experiencing right now is not rebellion, it is recovery. God is restoring something that was interrupted early in your life: internal authority. The ability to stand inside your own knowing without needing witnesses, agreements, or applause. That is why this season feels unfamiliar. You are no longer being guided by the reactions of others. You are being guided by alignment, and alignment does not always explain itself. Chosen one. Some of the discomfort you feel when you choose not to explain is not coming from the present. It is echoing from the past. It is the old fear of being abandoned if you don't perform emotional labor for others. It is the old anxiety of being misunderstood and punished for it. But God is gently showing you that you are no longer in that environment. You are no longer small. You are no longer powerless. You are no longer dependent on approval to exist. The explanation habit is breaking because the wound that created it is finally being healed. There are people around you who are unsettled by this change. They may not say it directly, but you can feel it. They ask more questions than before. They probe. They want clarity. They want reassurance. And it would be easy to interpret that as care. But chosen one, discernment is required here. Not every question is about connection. Some questions are about control. Some people are uncomfortable when they can no longer predict you, manage you, or access your inner world on demand. This is where the shift becomes spiritual. Because when God begins to elevate someone, He removes them from familiar patterns of emotional exchange. You are no longer meant to be transparent with everyone. Transparency without discernment becomes leakage. And leakage delays elevation. That is why God is teaching you to sit with the discomfort of not explaining, not to harden your heart, but to guard it. There was a moment in my own life when I realized that the people who demanded the most explanations were often the ones least invested in my growth. They were comfortable with who I was, as long as I remained accessible, understandable, and adjustable. The moment I began to move differently, they wanted explanations, not to support me, but to recalibrate me back into a role that benefited them. And that was a painful realization, but it was also liberating, because it showed me that silence was not abandonment. Silence was clarity. Chosen one. Heaven is not confused about you. God is not asking you to clarify your purpose, your pace, or your process. Scripture shows us again and again that when God moves, He rarely explains Himself beforehand. He speaks, He acts, and understanding follows obedience, not the other way around. You are learning to live that way now, to move when God says move, to pause when God says pause, to say no without a paragraph attached, to say yes without defending it. This is why your conversations are changing. You are saying less, but meaning more. You are explaining less, but standing firmer. And some people will interpret that as distance. Let them. Distance is sometimes the evidence of growth. Not everyone can walk with you into the next level of authority. Not because they are evil, but because they are comfortable where they are. And comfort does not ascend. Chosen one. I want to speak to the fear that rises when you imagine fully releasing this habit. The fear that says, if I don't explain, I'll lose people. That fear is understandable, but it is not prophetic. What you may lose are relationships built on access, not alignment. And what you gain are connections rooted in respect, not obligation. God is not subtracting from your life. He is refining it. There is also a practical wisdom in this season that God is teaching you through lived experience. When you explain yourself constantly, you teach people that they are entitled to your reasoning. When you pause, you teach them to observe your fruit instead. And fruit speaks louder than explanations ever could. Your peace speaks. Your consistency speaks. Your discernment speaks. Your results speak. And heaven is aligning you with environments that respond to fruit, not performance. This is where the supernatural dimension becomes tangible. As you stop leaking energy through unnecessary explanations, you will notice your focus sharpen, your decisions become clearer, your timing improves. Opportunities begin to recognize you without you chasing them. This is not mystical exaggeration. This is alignment at work. Energy conserved becomes power redirected, and power redirected attracts provision. Chosen one wealth does not flow toward insecurity. Influence does not settle on indecision. Elevation does not rest on people who are still asking permission to exist. God is positioning you as someone who moves with quiet authority, someone who does not rush to be understood, someone who trusts that what is from heaven does not need to be defended on earth. I know this shift is not easy. There will be moments when the old reflex kicks in, when you feel the urge to clarify, soften, explain, overgive. When that happens, pause, breathe. Ask yourself one question: is this explanation coming from fear or from alignment? If it is fear, release it. If it is alignment, speak it without apology. This discernment alone will change your life. Chosen one. You are not becoming less loving. You are becoming more anchored. You are not becoming distant. You are becoming directed. And you are not losing your voice. You are learning when it truly matters to use it. This is the quiet construction of authority. And authority, once established, does not need to announce itself. It simply stands. Chosen one. There is a reason this instruction feels confrontational to your spirit, and it has nothing to do with pride and everything to do with power. Because the moment you stop explaining yourself, you interrupt systems that were built on your compliance. You break agreements that were never spoken out loud but were enforced through expectation. And this is why resistance rises the moment your silence becomes intentional. I need you to understand something clearly. Not everyone who asks you for an explanation wants understanding. Many want reassurance that they still have access. They want confirmation that they can still question you, correct you, slow you down, or pull you back into familiar patterns. And when you no longer offer that reassurance, it exposes the imbalance that was always there. This is not about communication. This is about control. I learned this the hard way. There was a season when I noticed that the more grounded I became, the more questions I received. Not curious questions, but probing ones. Why are you doing it this way? Why did you change? Why are you so quiet now? And every question carried a subtle demand: explain yourself so I can place you back where I feel comfortable. But chosen one elevation makes people uneasy when they benefited from your insecurity. This is why God is teaching you discernment over disclosure, not secrecy. Discernment, there is a difference. Secrecy is rooted in fear. Discernment is rooted in wisdom. Heaven does not require you to narrate your process to people who are not assigned to your destiny. Scripture shows us that even when God revealed his plans, he did so selectively. Not everyone heard the same thing at the same time. Not everyone was given access to the same depth, and neither should you. Chosen one. Silence backed by identity is not weakness. It is authority. Authority does not rush to defend itself. Authority does not argue its worth. Authority does not over-explain to feel safe. Authority knows that what is real will stand without commentary. This is why the enemy hates your silence, because silence removes his leverage. He cannot twist what you do not feed. He cannot manipulate what you do not explain. There are people who thrived on your emotional availability, your willingness to clarify, your openness to being questioned. And when that door closes, they feel destabilized. That discomfort is not your responsibility to resolve. You are not called to stabilize others at the cost of your alignment. God is asking you to hold your ground, not to soothe reactions that were never yours to carry. I want to speak directly to the part of you that still feels guilty for not explaining. That guilt did not come from God. It was trained into you through environments where love was conditional and understanding had to be earned. You learned that if you did not explain yourself well enough, you would be misunderstood. If you were misunderstood, you would be rejected. And so explanation became a form of self-protection. But protection is not the same as authority, and God is transitioning you from one to the other. Chosen one, you are entering a season where people will have to adjust to you instead of you adjusting to them. This is not arrogance. This is order. When something grows, the environment must either expand or fall away. You cannot remain accessible to everyone and still ascend. Elevation requires boundaries. Boundaries require silence, and silence requires trust. Trust in God. Trust in timing. Trust that what is meant to stay will not require constant explanation to remain. This is why some relationships feel strained right now. Not because you did something wrong, but because you stopped doing what kept the imbalance hidden. When you stop explaining, you stop performing emotional labor for others. You stop carrying the weight of making sure everyone is comfortable with your evolution. And that reveals who was walking with you and who was managing you. Chosen one, this is also where spiritual warfare becomes subtle. The enemy does not always attack through obvious chaos. Sometimes he attacks through pressure. Pressure to clarify, pressure to justify, pressure to prove that you are still the same. But you are not the same, and pretending you are would delay what God is releasing. Heaven is watching how you respond in these small moments, not to test you, but to train you. Every time you choose silence over explanation, you strengthen your internal authority. I remember the first time I held my silence when everything in me wanted to explain. My heart raced, my mind rehearsed every possible misunderstanding, but I stayed quiet. And what happened surprised me. The situation resolved itself without my intervention. The truth surfaced on its own, and more importantly, I felt something shift inside me, a sense of stability I had never known. That was the moment I realized that explaining had been draining me more than protecting me. Chosen one. God is building that same stability in you, a rootedness that does not sway with opinion, a confidence that does not rise and fall with approval. This is essential for what is coming, because where God is taking you, opinions will be many, but clarity must remain singular. You cannot carry divine assignments while constantly adjusting to human expectations. This is also why your prayer life may be changing. You may find yourself saying less and listening more, sitting longer in stillness, feeling less urgency to speak and more clarity in waiting. That is not distance from God. That is intimacy maturing. God speaks most clearly when the noise of explanation fades. And He is speaking to you now, not in panic, but in peace. Chosen one, there is a supernatural alignment happening as you release the need to explain. Opportunities are repositioning, people are being filtered, environments are shifting. You may not see it all yet, but you will feel it. A sense that you no longer need to chase validation. A sense that your presence carries weight without effort. That is not imagined. That is authority taking root. Let me say this plainly. You do not need to convince anyone of who you are becoming. You do not need to narrate your growth. You do not need to justify your boundaries. God is not asking you to be understood by everyone. He is asking you to be aligned with Him. And alignment will always outpace explanation. So when the urge rises to explain, pause. Ask yourself whether this explanation will bring clarity or compromise, whether it will strengthen alignment or weaken authority, and choose accordingly. You are not being harsh. You are being faithful. You are not withdrawing. You are positioning. Chosen one. The silence you are learning to hold is not empty. It is full of direction. It is full of discernment. It is full of God. And as you remain in this posture, something undeniable begins to form around you. A presence that does not ask to be acknowledged. A presence that does not need to be defended. A presence that simply is. Chosen one. There comes a moment when silence stops feeling like restraint and starts feeling like alignment. And that moment is where many people turn back, not because they are unworthy, but because the stillness exposes everything that noise used to cover. When you stop explaining yourself, you are left alone with your own authority, and that can feel unsettling if you were trained to outsource certainty to other people's reactions. At first, silence feels like standing without armor. Your mind scans the room. Your heart anticipates misinterpretation. Old reflexes flare up, urging you to clarify, soften, rescue the moment. But God is asking you to remain still, not frozen, not passive, still. Because stillness is not weakness, it is mastery. Scripture tells us to be still and know, not be loud and convince. And knowing comes before being recognized. This is where the detox begins. The anxiety you feel when you don't explain is not intuition, it is withdrawal. It is the nervous system learning that it no longer needs to perform to be safe. For years you associated explanation with survival. You explained to avoid conflict. You explained to keep relationships intact. You explained to prove your goodness. But now God is recalibrating your inner world. He is teaching your spirit that safety no longer comes from being understood by everyone, but from being aligned with Him. I want to speak honestly here because this part of the journey is rarely romantic. There are nights when you will replay conversations in your head, wondering if you should have said more. Moments when silence feels like abandonment. Times when you question whether you're becoming distant or difficult. I've been there. I remember lying awake, second-guessing my quiet, wondering if I was burning bridges I didn't mean to burn. But over time, something remarkable happened. The bridges that collapsed were never meant to carry my future weight, and the ones that remained were built on respect, not explanation. Chosen one. When you hold silence with integrity, systems that depended on your overfunctioning begin to collapse. Not dramatically, quietly. People who relied on your emotional availability begin to feel exposed. Dynamics that thrived on your reassurance lose their grip. This is not destruction, it is revelation. Silence reveals what words conceal. It shows you who can meet you in maturity and who only knew how to engage you in insecurity. You may notice that some people grow louder when you grow quieter. They fill the space you used to occupy. They project motives. They tell stories. Let them. God is not threatened by noise, and neither should you be. The temptation here is to step back in and correct the narrative. Resist it. Correction feeds the very system God is dismantling. Truth does not require you to chase it. Truth stands and waits to be seen. This is where many chosen ones misunderstand the nature of spiritual authority. They think authority comes from being right, from having the best explanation, from presenting the clearest argument. But authority comes from coherence, from internal alignment so complete that you do not fracture under pressure. When your inner world is settled, your outer world eventually adjusts. It has no choice. I've watched this play out in my own life. When I stopped explaining, people initially filled the silence with their assumptions. Some thought I had changed. Others thought I was upset. A few assumed guilt. But as time passed and my consistency remained, the noise lost credibility. What remained was clarity, and clarity always outlives confusion. The truth did not need my defense. It revealed itself through stability. Chosen one. This is why God is asking you to endure the discomfort of being misunderstood. Not forever, just long enough for your alignment to speak. When you rush to explain, you interrupt the process. You short-circuit the revelation that silence would have completed. There is a reason Jesus did not answer every accusation. Not because he was indifferent, but because he trusted the Father to reveal what words could not. Silence also trains discernment. When you stop filling the space with explanations, you begin to hear what was always there beneath the surface. You notice tone shifts, energy changes, intentions reveal themselves. You see who respects your boundaries and who resents them. This information is invaluable. God uses silence to sharpen your perception, and perception is essential for the next level of stewardship you are being prepared for. There is a peace that begins to settle in when you realize you are not responsible for managing how others feel about your obedience. That responsibility never belonged to you. It was a burden you picked up out of fear. God is now inviting you to put it down, to trust that what is from him will endure scrutiny without your intervention, to believe that alignment is stronger than approval. Chosen one. You are learning to sit in a new kind of power, a power that does not react, a power that does not rush, a power that does not flinch under misunderstanding. This is the power that attracts divine alignment, because heaven responds to stillness with movement. When you stop explaining, God starts rearranging. You may already be noticing subtle shifts, fewer arguments, clearer decisions, a deeper sense of peace even when circumstances haven't changed yet. That is not coincidence. That is confirmation. Your spirit is coming back into alignment with its original design. You were never meant to live in constant self-justification. You were meant to walk in authority that flows from knowing who you are and whose you are. Let me tell you something important. Silence does not mean you never speak. It means you speak from alignment, not anxiety. It means when you do speak, your words carry weight because they are not diluted by over-explanation. They are precise, measured, intentional. People listen differently when you are not trying to convince them. They feel the difference, even if they cannot articulate it. Chosen one. This phase requires courage, not the loud kind, the quiet kind, the kind that stays rooted when misunderstood, the kind that trusts God with reputation, timing, and outcome, the kind that knows when to remain silent and when to speak without guilt in either direction. This is maturity. This is elevation. As you continue to hold this posture, something inside you begins to settle. The urge to over-explain weakens. The anxiety loses its grip. You realize you are still here, still loved, still guided, and nothing fell apart when you chose alignment over reassurance. That realization changes everything. You are not being tested, you are being trained, and the training is working. Chosen one. After the silence settles and the anxiety loosens its grip, something subtle but undeniable begins to happen around you. The world starts responding differently, not because you demanded respect, not because you explained yourself better, but because your presence has changed. There is a weight to you now, a steadiness, an unspoken clarity that cannot be negotiated. This is where authority stops being internal only and begins to register externally. You may notice it first in small ways. Conversations shorten. People listen more carefully when you do speak. Questions become fewer, or they change in tone. Instead of interrogation, there is observation. Instead of pressure, there is pause. That is not coincidence. That is recognition. When you stop explaining yourself, you stop positioning others as judges. And when the courtroom disappears, so does the need for defense. I remember the first time I felt this shift clearly. I walked into a space where I used to feel the need to overperform, to be agreeable, to clarify my intentions, to soften my edges so others would stay comfortable. But this time I didn't do any of that. I didn't push my presence forward, and I didn't shrink it either. I simply showed up. And something changed. People treated me differently, not warmer, not colder, just more carefully, more respectfully. That was when I realized authority does not announce itself. It settles. Chosen. This is what happens when integrity replaces insecurity. Integrity is not about being perfect. It is about being whole. When your inner world is no longer fragmented by the need to please, explain, or justify, your outer world senses coherence. And coherence is magnetic. People trust what feels consistent. Opportunities move toward what feels stable. Influence gravitates toward what feels grounded. This is also where your relationship with provision begins to change. Money, opportunity, favor, and access do not respond to desperation. They respond to authority. When you stop explaining yourself, you stop leaking energy. When energy is no longer leaking, it concentrates. And concentrated energy creates momentum. This is not mystical thinking. This is alignment at work. Chosen one. Many people pray for increase without realizing that increase requires containment. God does not pour abundance into vessels that are constantly cracked by insecurity. Explanation is often a crack. It is a small but persistent release of power outward. Silence seals the vessel. Authority fortifies it. And once fortified, it can carry more without collapsing. You may begin to notice that opportunities find you instead of you chasing them. That conversations open doors without you trying to open them. That people assume competence without needing proof. This is the fruit of internal authority. Not arrogance, not entitlement, alignment. Heaven entrusts more to those who do not need to convince others of their worth. There is also a pruning that happens here. Some connections fade, not dramatically, quietly. The constant communication slows, the emotional labor decreases. This can feel strange at first, especially if you were used to being needed. But chosen one being needed is not the same as being respected, and God is transitioning you from one to the other. I want to speak gently but truthfully. Some people were only close to you because you made yourself accessible through explanation. You offered context. You shared your inner process. You made them feel secure by keeping them informed. When that stops, the relationship loses its structure. This is not your failure. It is exposure. Relationships that require constant explanation to survive are not built for elevation. Chosen one. The rooms you are being prepared for do not operate on explanation. They operate on observation. They watch how you move, how you decide, how you hold pressure. They do not need your story. They look for fruit, and fruit speaks louder than words ever could. This is why God is teaching you to trust outcomes more than opinions. Opinions fluctuate, outcomes remain. When you stop explaining, you give outcomes the space to speak. And when outcomes speak, explanations become irrelevant. This is how authority establishes itself without conflict, without confrontation, without noise. There is also a shift happening in how you see yourself. You begin to trust your own discernment more. You no longer need external confirmation to validate your instincts. You stop doubting yourself every time someone questions you. That is internal authority maturing, and as it matures, your decisions become cleaner, faster, more aligned. Chosen one. I know there is still a part of you that wonders if this new posture will make you seem distant or unkind. Let me reassure you, authority does not eliminate compassion, it clarifies it. You become more intentional with your care. You give from overflow, not obligation. You speak when it is purposeful, not reactive. That makes your love stronger, not weaker. This is also where spiritual alignment becomes visible in practical ways. Your schedule changes, your priorities shift. What once drained you now feels optional. What once confused you now feels obvious. You begin to say no without rehearsing reasons. You begin to say yes without fear of misunderstanding. This is freedom, not the loud kind, the grounded kind. Chosen one. There is a reason God is emphasizing this instruction now. What He is preparing to release into your life requires discretion. It requires maturity. It requires someone who can hold blessing without overexposing it. Silence is not just protection, it is stewardship. You cannot steward what you feel compelled to explain to everyone. I have seen people sabotage divine opportunities simply by talking too much, by inviting too many opinions, by explaining what God had not yet finished. God is teaching you to move quietly so that what He builds in you can stand without interference. This is wisdom, not secrecy, alignment, not avoidance. As you continue to walk this out, you will notice something else. Respect begins to replace familiarity. People approach you differently. They listen more carefully. They project less. This is not because you demanded it. It is because you stopped diminishing yourself through unnecessary explanation. The world responds to how you treat yourself. Chosen one. Your upgrade is not loud. It is obvious. It shows in how you carry yourself, in how you pause before responding, in how you choose peace over proving a point, in how you let God handle what you used to manage yourself. This is elevation without announcement, authority without argument. Stay in this posture. Let it settle. Let it work. You are not behind. You are not confused. You are not losing connection. You are gaining alignment. And alignment always attracts what explanation never could. Chosen one. By the time you reach this stage, something fundamental has shifted inside you. You are no longer asking, "Is this okay?" You are no longer scanning faces for approval after you speak or rehearsing explanations before you act. Instead, there is a quiet knowing rising within you, not loud, not dramatic, just firm. This is the moment where internal authority becomes embodied, not just understood. At this level, silence is no longer something you practice, it becomes something you inhabit. You don't hold your tongue out of fear, you hold it out of clarity. You don't withdraw because you are uncertain, you pause because you are settled. And that distinction matters more than most people realize, because fear-based silence creates tension, but authority-based silence creates presence. You may notice that people respond to you before you even say anything. Their tone adjusts, their energy shifts. Some become more respectful, others become uneasy. This is not because you changed your personality, It is because you stopped leaking yourself. You stopped giving people unnecessary access to your reasoning, your emotions, your inner negotiations. And when access changes, power dynamics change with it. I want to tell you something I learned only after walking this path for a long time. People do not actually need your explanations to understand you. They use explanations to locate you, to place you in a category they can manage. When you stop explaining, you remove the labels they relied on, and that forces them to relate to you differently or not at all. Both outcomes are alignment. Chosen one. This is where many people feel the urge to balance things out by becoming overly kind, overly available, overly reassuring. They sense the shift and fear being misperceived. But God is not asking you to compensate for authority. He is asking you to stand in it. Authority does not need to be softened to be accepted. It needs to be embodied to be respected. This is also the phase where your boundaries become invisible but unmovable. You don't announce them. You don't explain them. You simply live them. And people learn very quickly what is accessible and what is not. That is maturity, not rigidity, not harshness. Maturity. It saves you from endless negotiations that drain your spirit and dilute your focus. You may also notice a shift in how you experience conflict. Situations that once pulled you into long conversations, justifications, emotional back and forths, now resolve faster. Either they dissolve or they clarify themselves without your involvement. This is because conflict feeds on engagement. When engagement is no longer reactive, conflict loses oxygen. Chosen one, this is not avoidance. This is discernment in action. You are learning when to engage and when to remain still. When to speak and when to let silence do the work. And silence does work. It exposes motives. It reveals intentions. It shows you who respects you and who resents your growth. There is also a deeper spiritual layer unfolding here. When you stop explaining yourself, you stop fighting battles God never asked you to fight. You step out of defensive posture and into agreement. And agreement with God carries authority that no argument ever could. Scripture shows us that battles are won in obedience, not explanation. You are aligning with that truth now. I want to address something very real. There will be moments when people accuse you of changing, of being distant, of being hard to read. Let me say this clearly, you did not become distant. You became centered. You did not become hard. You became clear. People who were used to accessing you through explanation will feel the difference. That does not mean you are wrong. It means the relationship was built on a version of you that no longer exists. Chosen one. This is where self-trust deepens. You stop second-guessing your decisions every time someone questions you. You stop explaining your boundaries as if they are negotiable. You begin to move with a sense of inner permission, not recklessness, permission. The kind that comes from knowing you are aligned, not just confident. This self-trust changes everything. It changes how you walk into rooms. It changes how you respond to pressure. It changes how you handle delays, opposition, and uncertainty. Because when you trust your alignment, you do not panic when things are unclear. You wait. And waiting from authority feels very different than waiting from fear. You may find that God speaks to you more clearly in this season, not necessarily with more words, but with more certainty. His guidance becomes simpler, less cluttered, less noisy. That is because you have removed the interference of over-explanation. You have made space for listening, and listening sharpens discernment. Chosen one, there is also a sobering realization that comes with this stage. You see how much energy you once spent managing perceptions. How many decisions were influenced by how they would be received rather than whether they were aligned? This realization can bring grief. Let it. Grieve the version of you that had to survive that way. Honor their resilience, and then release them. That season is complete, as authority settles in your life begins to simplify. Not because it becomes easier, but because it becomes clearer. You know what matters. You know what does not. You know when to engage and when to walk away. And you no longer feel the need to explain those choices to anyone who is not assigned to your life. Chosen one. This is where the phrase "your upgrade is obvious" becomes real, not because everyone applauds it, but because it changes the way reality interacts with you. Opportunities align, resistance weakens, distractions lose their pull. You are no longer easily provoked into overfunctioning. You are no longer easily drawn into proving yourself. This is the posture of someone God can trust. Trust with influence, trust with responsibility, trust with provision, because you are no longer driven by fear of misunderstanding. You are driven by alignment, and alignment always attracts what explanation repels. Let me speak this over you plainly. You are not late. You are not behind. You are not confused. You are becoming integrated, whole, rooted, and wholeness carries a gravity that explanation never could. People feel it. Systems respond to it, and heaven recognizes it. Stay here. Stay grounded. Let the silence continue to do its work. You do not need to rush. You do not need to clarify. You do not need to announce what God is doing in you. What is real will stand. What is aligned will remain, and what is not will fall away without you lifting a finger. You are learning how to exist without apology, and that changes everything. Chosen one, as this moment closes, let your spirit rest in what has already been set in motion. Heaven has not spoken this word to tease you. This was not revelation for information, but for alignment. What God has begun in you is already moving beneath the surface quietly, precisely, and without resistance. You are not waiting on permission. You are standing in your Kairos moment, the exact timing written for you before you ever asked for it. Anointed one, I declare that every unnecessary burden is lifting. Every false obligation is falling away, and every delayed promise is now accelerating toward you. The silence you are learning to hold is not emptiness, it is authority. It is the posture of someone heaven trusts with increased influence and divine provision. What was blocked by explanation is now released through alignment. Remain faithful, stay yielded to the flow of the anointing. Do not rush. Do not shrink. Walk forward with gratitude, knowing that what is unfolding does not need defense, it needs stewardship. The upgrade is already obvious in the spirit, and soon it will be undeniable in the natural. If this word sealed something in you, stay connected. Subscribe as a sign of alignment, and write your city or nation in the comments as a quiet declaration that you are present, available, and ready. Chosen one, go forward in peace. Heaven is backing your next step.